Greetings, YouTube. This is 3coursethoughts here. Once again, I hope you guys are, thriving to the best of your ability in these trying times. All right. So with that being said, we're going to start with today's topic, which is the importance of history. But before I begin with discussing that subject matter, I just want to start with a relevant quote, which is, "The shadows of the past can be felt in the present." To be honest, I don't know exactly where the quote is from. Anyone in the comment section, if you know where that quote is from, please leave it down below. And that quote has meaning with respect to this topic because the effects of history can still linger on in the present day, in the present tense, whether that be certain laws, certain sentiments, which I'm not going to discuss right now at all at this point, this juncture, but that is generally clear. Now you might be like, "Oh, this is pretty obvious, 3coursethoughts. Why are you telling me this?" Well, I'm telling you this because knowing your history, you should know your history, or just know history in general to the best of your ability. So what that means is that, let's say there's a certain subject matter you're interested in, maybe concept in science, some degree of identity, where that is with your culture or your family and so forth. That history would be important because it'll be that's the backbone of what you currently are experiencing, what you in your own experiences in your past might have experienced, and maybe even going forward what you might eventually experience. The notion of history repeating itself also is something that comes to mind, given human nature, karma and randomness, like I said, which is a concept I stated in a previous video, and so forth. So, as such, knowing the history, you could be like, "Well, I know my history. I know what the history books tell me, or what my parents told me, or what I found on the internet," and that's all well and good. That's awesome. But I challenge you guys, if you have not done this already, if you've never considered this, let's say you're a high school student, let's say you're a college student, let's say you're 40 years old, let's say you're 10 years old. Well, yeah. I challenge you guys to analyze that history that you know or think you know. If you have already, dabbled in knowing certain events that have taken place, I challenge you guys to analyze that history. And that's important with the importance of history because it's not simply, history in essence is a story. And as such, the story has different sides to it. So let's say the history books that you may have learned in school, or your parents may have told you if they were a part of, if they have experienced it, or they heard if it's passed down from generation to generation, that story, that's only one side of that story that you're getting, most likely. If, in all likelihood, that's a side of the story, it's a one-dimensional aspect of the story. So what that means is that there are other facets to the story, to the narrative, that will make it more whole. In my personal opinion, I don't think any individual can get the complete story because there's so much things within the story, that events or set of events that took place, that it probably is almost impossible to get that complete story, perfectly. But what I'm saying or suggesting or challenging you more, so to speak, is that if you get more sides of the story, it'll give you, as an individual, a more complete picture, even make you question or prompt you to question, hey, if this is inconsistent what I heard from another account, maybe someone else's side of the story. I mean, sometimes you can have a scenario where the sources that you're looking at, while they're saying different things specifically, the story that's telling is the same. And that's true. In a search for trying to find different sources. But what I'm saying is that in that search, to the best of your ability, I challenge you to try and find a source that, like, if the general narrative generally says A or something, look for something that says B for the same context. And the reason why I'm challenging you to do this is because, like I said, there's more than one side to a story, and as such, you can analyze the two sides or the set of sides that you find. So if you find a story, a B story, a C story, and so forth for the same event, historical period, you get different vantage points. So you're like, oh, whoa, I didn't know this happened, or that's why this happened, or it's the stories that A says and B says seem inconsistent. What's going on here? Things of that nature. So, and with that being said, I'm not a historian, not a historical expert. Just a guy who, sometimes thoughts may come to me, and I want to share them with you guys in terms of things that might be taken for granted, in the regular everyday experience. So going forward with that note, I have a suspicion, and I could be completely off base. Anyone who's well versed in history, that's a historian, please comment and add more insight to this. I would really appreciate that. But I have a suspicion that, let's say, historians, archaeologists go and they research, they go to a preserved area. They do an excavation of like a ruins or something. So now they're probably consulting with different people, different other experts, like maybe a scientist that can date things to get like a precise year or measurement of time in which they can ascertain the origin of said ruins or area that they've excavated, and then they try to the best of their ability, probably try to uncover what might have occurred, and in doing that, they tell a story, and they also couple that with probably records and documentation that was either suspected or confirmed in some specific manner, whether it was probably a historical framework or system that they have for doing so, and thus they had the historical narrative or story that you would probably see in the museums that is put in the history books. But here's where the suspicion part I have that comes in. They're hired by people. They're generally probably not doing this independent, freelance, like they're probably gonna need funding by people way above them that they may want certain answers, certain things that they want told. So maybe the historian probably came up with a complete, like a very big story, and then it goes to like a set of people that review it for authenticity, for consistency. But probably after that process, it goes to that head honcho person or someone that represents them, that top person that probably hired them. And then they'll be like, oh, I don't want this told. I don't want that told. There's a possibility it happens. Now, I'm not saying this as a conspiracy theory. It's just a suspicion I have with respect to, like, the world around us. Not everything is as it seems. And that's part of the thing when I say things are taken for granted. Like, things aren't what they seem. So, basically, that might lead to a lot of disappointments, surprises, and so forth. And these things are unfortunate. But this is this is the primary reason I'm emphasizing the importance of history. Like I said, that analysis, that investigation, and hopefully conclusion that you can draw to the best of your ability, and it's not just, okay, this happened because they told me that happened. That's it. You know, I only heard one side of the story, and that's it. You know, so that's pretty much my spiel on that. And a final note that I would like to say is my personal experience with like history, like as a subject matter. So I started out like as a kid. I personally didn't like school one bit. I probably may make a video on that sometime in the future, depending on how things go. Let me know if you want to hear about that in the comment section. Love to probably divulge into that a little bit. But anyway, not like in school, history was one of those subjects that was just like, first of all, who cares about what happened? This is me like in high school, little kid, you know. And I'm just like, yo, how do we even know this happened, you know? I'm like, we weren't there. How do we know this happened? And so forth. But an interesting thing with that is that I like this media known as anime, which is like, I guess, is Japanese animation. Sometimes it's in English, sometimes it's in Japanese. The subject matter for that media can vary. It could be very serious to very, you know, juvenile. It has many facets of Japanese culture, the whole 9 yards. The reason why I liked it, I was part of a generation where like tsunami was a big thing. I mean, if you don't know about it, it's not a big deal. You could just Google it and so forth. But aside from that, the main reason that stood out to me, that media, was because it told a story. Me as a young kid, usually like a lot of stories, like cartoons, real shows with, I guess, real live action shows, it was more so about, like, there was no continuity. I would say there's not really much story content going on. So this stood out to me. So that idea of story now carried on into history, where I had a particular assignment for history class, and I took this as a challenge because it was like, there's a certain amount of pages I had to read and then answer questions. Normally I just like not take the assignment seriously. I got mediocre grades. But this particular assignment I took as a challenge because of some other student that was doing far better than me, and they was like, oh, they pretty much challenged me. They called me out, and I was like, nah, man, I'm not one to like take down. I'm one to like not really back down from a challenge. I guess technically I'm not like of the competitive spirit in terms of like, if someone's doing better than me, I don't really care. But if they trying to challenge me, generally speaking, that's a different ball game. I'm like, oh yeah, oh word, all right, we'll see about that. So I took that challenge, and I'm like, wait, this is a little harder than I thought. So I started to sit down and I actually read the signed page I'm supposed to read, and I was like, oh snap. This history thing was on like Napoleon and the French Revolution. And I'm like, whoa, this is a sequence of events. This whole thing is a story. I was like, this is pretty interesting. From that moment on, respect to that challenge and so forth, I personally never looked at history the same way again. So what I hope from this video, my long spiel that you guys get from this, is that history has its importance, you know? So you might be taken in school, college, you might have like past that stage, you might be just entering that stage, you might be a historian, you might be into history already, you might be a history buff. I'm sure history buffs can second me on this one, where you analyze different historical contexts and sources and compare them with one another to get a more complete story. But that's all I have for today. Like I said, of course, I hope you guys have a wonderful, productive day to the best of your ability. Try and thrive in these times to the best of your ability. Also, if you like the video, please, that'll be much appreciated. Give a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you like the content. All right, so That's all I have for today. 3 course thoughts out.